In this exercise, we're going to be talking about BOMs. And I don't mean BOMBs, I mean BOMs. What we're talking about with bill of materials is not what goes on a drawing or even what goes into an explosive device. We're talking about what goes into an assembly. If I look at assembly drawing here, up at the top, I have bill of materials. What this bill of materials is everything about the parts in Inventor. And you notice at first you get the model data, and there's some pretty standard stuff in here: description, stock number, revision, quantity, BOM structure, and the initial part number. You'll see that the structure and parts only are disabled. If you right click on those and say enable, you can actually see these. See all the parts, you can see the structured structures. If you had sub-assemblies, you can see the sub-assemblies in here. And you notice that there's not a whole lot of information in here. What we can do is we can go up here to the top of our list, say real-time column customization. If we take a look, we have all of our iProperties in here. So we can add some pretty standard stuff in here. I always like to have author. I actually like to have file name so I can see if the file name and part number are the same. I like to name my files exactly what my part number is, but sometimes you change the part number and you forget to change the file name. This is a good way to double check that. You may even have things like material. This is another good check. You see things like generic. Generic's bad. Generic is a dumb piece of plastic. Even if you're designing something out of dumb plastic, it's probably not going to be dumb plastic. It's going to be copoly. It's going to be, polycarbonate. It's going to be ABS. It's going to be some kind of specialized plastic. So you need to actually call out what it is. This is another good check that I always do to make sure that I didn't forget to change something. This will greatly affect the weight of your part if that's important to you. You also can go through and do things like dates. You can adjust the date, anything that's been modified. You can adjust things such as who the manager is or vendor information. All this information that's all based in your iProperties. Instead of having to go through one at a time and change all of this, what you can do is you could come in here and change all of this in bulk. If I didn't want all these to say Andy Warren, if I wanted them all to say A Warren, hold down Shift, and I can get it to say A Warren. Sometimes it'll take, sometimes it won't. If it won't actually take with Shift, you just drag it up there, saying, hey, this is read-only. That's okay. So it changes all of them that aren't read-only, A Warren. So I can do bulk changes like that. Or I can double-click on the material here and say, you know what? This is going to be a special aircraft ABS or whatever this may be. This here, this is going to be copper. Hey, it's copper top. And so I can take and add whatever I want it to be. Now this is going to be rubber. This is going to be the exact same thing as this one. So what I could do is I could come in here and override the quantity and get rid of this one. Basically what I'm saying there is, even though there is a mirror part in there, I don't want it to show up in my parts list that I'm going to put on my drawing because I'm not going to call out a mirror part. I'm just going to make more of these. These are going to be custom cut down or whatever. If you do need to change them back, you can change them back to what they were. You can come in here and you can play with the item numbering. You can sort, you can renumber items. Say start at 1 or start at, whatever I want it to be and get it to renumber. I have the ability to come in here and look at the engineer's notebook, export this out. So now you can have that information stored in an engineering notebook. The Inventor has a real nice one here that you can do calculations and things with. I can save this out to Excel. I can go in here and look at different options for enabling and disabling. I can actually add custom properties. And that's not pre-created custom properties. But if I wanted to add a custom property to everything in this assembly, say water jet or turret or laser, to customize the ERP system to determine which is going to go where, I could call out and say, okay, this is going to be a sheet metal part or a fab part, or this is going to be a mill part or a molded part. And that could help my ERP system determine where to send these parts to get manufactured. So you can add anything you want in here and change it all through the bill of materials. I think of my bill of materials as kind of my mass change area. I can change everything I need to change to deal with this part. I'm going to change all this so that it'll show up correctly in a true bill of materials, which you and I probably think of. You're thinking about a piece of paper that's either, a spreadsheet, or it's on a drawing that's a parts list that's on the drawing. Inventor considers that bill of material a parts list. It doesn't look at it as a bill of material because it's a combed down, filtered, homogenized, averaged, everything you want to do to your bill of material to make it look like you want your vendor to see it, or you want your customer to see it, or you want your shop floor to see it. The bill of materials that Inventor thinks of is everything. It's all the properties that make up that part are all stored in the bill of materials. So this is a really good way to store things. We can actually come in here and do things like part number row. So we can come in here. So I can enable row merge. So if I did have two of the same thing in my assembly, I can merge them together. I can actually update my mass properties. So if you were to turn on mass in here, sometimes whenever you change things, such as when we had that part up here that we changed to ABS plastic, and if I come in here and I say, oh, nope, that's supposed to be PPS plastic, you can see that it automatically changes my mass. If for some reason my masses were out of date, I could actually update them all. I get done, say finish, and now all those properties have been added to all my parts. It's a very powerful tool, but a lot of people get confused between parameters and bill of materials and parts list. So think of it as this way. This is a properties list, the bill of materials. Parameters are numbers, information about creating an individual part, how long something is, how wide it is, how thick it is. The bill of materials is who did it and why they did it. And this is more of what was done. And then you have the parts list of what's needed to do it. So kind of think of it that way. Bill of materials, you can use several different ways to export this out to an ERP or MRP type system. You can export this out to your different engineering calculation systems that you may have. And then you can look at it in several different ways. So think of it a lot like Excel. It does work like Excel where you can take and drag and copy. You can see there, it'll copy it in there. You can even put formulas in some things where you can say, this time this equals this. So play with this, see what you can find out inside of here. Look at the Battery Pack Revision 3 model, and we will be talking about the parts list next so you can see how this relates to what's actually going on the drawing. Have fun with it and really get in there and see what's inside that parts list.